The second most popular holiday for Rusyns is Christmas, but it is certainly celebrated very differently than the way most Americans are aware of it. In the first place, Christmas Day is almost an afterthought for Rusyns. It's Christmas Eve that's critical, and Christmas Eve is important because Christmas replaced a previous pagan holiday that Rusyns already had, where Rusyns believed that on the shortest day of the year, in December, that they would commune with their ancestors. I'm sure you're probably wondering, so I should tell you that a key component of pagan Rusyn religion was ancestor worship. And there was this belief constantly of being connected to ancestors and being respectful of ancestors. And Christmas Eve is the perfect example of this. Christmas Eve is celebrated with a particular meal called Holy Supper. In Rusyn, either Velia or Sviati Večer. And this Holy Supper, while it seems like a real Christmas event, is, as I say, an ancient pagan practice. Holy Supper begins with the need for the entire family to be there. And everything you learn about Holy Supper, though it appears to be a Christian celebration, is really focused on family unity and connecting generations. So, for instance, when the entire family must be there, the first star comes out, and that's the signal that the Holy Supper can begin. Now, the father has many particular customs he must keep in contact with as he begins this process. One of the first is that he must go out and take food to the animals first, because it is a Rusyn belief that since the animals were at the birth of Christ, that the animals should be rewarded, and that on Christmas Eve, animals can speak to God. And therefore, you want your animals saying good things about you. So you feed them first. Amongst the Hutsuls, one of the practices is the father then stands in front of the house with his axe, and he invokes all the witches and warlocks and evil spirits and invites them to come to Holy Supper. And he says this 3 times. And then at the end of the 3rd time, he makes the sign of the cross with his axe, and he says to all of those evil spirits, 3 times I have invited you, and since you have not come, therefore stay away all year. And this is his incantation to keep evil from befalling the household. Once the father enters the household, the family gets together and the first prayers are said. And then, depending on the Rusyn village you come from, the beginnings are different, but it is all about something communal happening. So in some, particularly Transcarpathian households, a shot of alcohol is shared, gone around the table, and everyone must drink from that common cup. In some others, particularly Zemplin households, a clove of garlic is taken and dipped in honey, and then everyone must share that. Or in some other community households, in some Shadish households and other areas, the father takes either that clove of garlic or his finger and dips it in honey and makes the sign of the cross on the forehead of everyone. All of these symbols meant, of course, to be protective for the family for the upcoming year. Then the family sits down to eat, and the meal must be meatless and dairyless. Now, what does that mean? It means no pork, no meat, no chicken, no beef, no butter, no eggs, no cream. So what does this meal consist of? Well, again, it's regional depending on what Rusyn areas you come from. But some of the common things are pyrohi, dough pockets stuffed with onions or potatoes or prunes. There are fish. The traditional fish was carp that was served at dinner. Bobauke, these are bread balls, in some households cooked with sauerkraut, in some with honey and poppy seed. Fruit compotes, beans, amongst the lemkos, pea soup, bean and sauerkraut soup, machanka, which is a mushroom soup. So it varies, but you can see that there are about 12 dishes that are a part of the celebration of Holy Supper. When Holy Supper is finished, then carols are sung. And in the old country, there was a group of particular carolers that came to your house. Now, they're not carolers like you and I would think, singing Good King Wenceslas, dressed in medieval costumes. They're a particular group called the Jasličkari. And the Jasličkari came out of the St. Francis's Passion plays of the Middle Ages. So when people couldn't read, how do you teach them activities and how do you teach them goodness and the lessons of the church? You put it in the form of theater. And that's what Jaslichkari is. These are young men of the parish who come and actually perform a very brief play in your home about Rusyn shepherds going to Bethlehem and discovering the Christ child, and the angels proclaiming to them and what they do. And one of these shepherds is dressed kind of raggedly. His name is Yuri Guba. And Yuri Guba represents mankind's darker nature. He is in a big furry coat. He's got a mask made out of sheepskin. He doesn't shave. He doesn't comb his hair. And he scares the children when he comes to the house because that's a part of who he is. He is mankind's deep, dark portion. In the play, he becomes converted. He comes to realize that the Christ child has come to save him, and he tells the Christ child that he's going to clean up his act. He says, I'm even going to take a bath, and I'm going to give you the best thing I have, my kobasi, my smoked sausage. So all of this happens along with carols, and then these carolers are given money for the church and nuts and fruits and kolache, cakes, for them to eat as they go from house to house to house. Now, when the family goes to Christmas services that evening, one of the things that's very important is to remember that this was about your ancestors and connecting with ancestors. So all the food for Holy Supper is not to be put away, but to be left on the table all night long so that the ancestors can come and feast on the food that you have prepared. In fact, in many households, when the table is set, an extra chair is set at the table. And some will say to you, that's a chair set waiting for Jesus to come. But many others keep the original concept, which was that was the chair for ancestors to come. And in fact, one of the more comical activities of Holy Supper is when you pray and you're going to sit down to have dinner, you're supposed to blow on your chair before you sit down so you don't accidentally sit on one of your ancestors. Once the Jaslichkari piece happens and the next day, and the carolers come, there is also a custom where for New Year's a different group of carolers come. And these come singing Szczedrioki, or these are hymns of good fortune, wishing you a good New Year. And these are dressed very differently. They are very, very ancient costumes. Some as goats, some are men dressed as women, someone comes dressed as death. All of these to deal with the cycle of life and the pagan practices of the Rusyns. And these people, again, you give wealth to. You give them food and apples and what have you. Amongst the Rusyns, there's the custom, of course, of having a very prosperous New Year's Day so that it will then be a very prosperous year. And there are ways to assure this, the most important of which is to recruit the polaznik to come to your house. Now, the polaznik is a man. It must be a man, and the man must be the first person that comes to your house on New Year's Day. So you let him in, and you give him a shot to drink, some cookies to eat, and some money to take with him. And this will assure then that you have an abundant and wonderful year.